Hi everybody, this is Luke, and welcome back to ThursDev. This week I'd like to talk a little bit about a genre of video games that is near and dear to my heart, and perhaps one of the most polarizing that I can think of. One that at one point was considered the undisputed king of the game market, then vanished seemingly overnight, only to see a resurgence in recent years. Some people love them, others outright dismiss them, but it seems that nearly everyone has an opinion on graphic adventure games. As far back as the 1970s, interactive fiction has been one of the most popular goals of video gaming. While arcade-style gameplay dominated much of the early game market thanks to its flashy visuals and easy-to-pick-up-and-play gameplay, there was a large segment of gaming that was more focused on the interactive fiction side of games, and that was responded to no more grandly than by a company based out of Oakhurst, California, called Sierra Online. Those of you in the younger generation may be familiar with the Sierra name as an imprint of Activision, thanks to its recent release of the new King's Quest game, but the brand name Sierra has been around since the late 1970s, and was attached to some of the most popular and enduring adventure game franchises ever created. Sierra Online's early triumph exists in the form of the first graphic adventure game, Mystery House, which used primitive, by modern standards, vector graphics and text with a command line parser as its main user interface. It was written by Roberta Williams, and it was considered revolutionary for its use of graphics in home computers, and sold a cool 15,000 copies, which in the very early 80s was nothing to scoff at. This was published with their then name Online Systems, under which they continued to release games over the following years as they refined their gameplay and process. Most notable among these early titles was The Wizard and the Princess, which is considered a spiritual prequel to the King's Quest series of today. Also noteworthy is their only fully text adventure, which also holds the dubious honor of being America's first erotic video game, Soft Porn Adventure, the inspiration for their later hit series Leisure Suit Larry. It was throughout the 80s that adventure games saw the birth of some of the most iconic and long-running game series. Mark Crow and Scott Murphy's Space Quest, Al Lowe's Leisure Suit Larry, Jim Walls' Police Quest, and Quest for Glory by Laurie and Corey Cole. Beginning with the development of one of the first truly prolific game engines of its time, AGI, Sierra was leading in video game technology and innovation for a long time, first with vector graphics, then color, later bitmapped images, animation, and many more innovations that kept them firmly at the forefront of game technology for many years to come. They helped to define the tropes of the genre, the focus on deep narrative presented between stints of mind-bending puzzle solving, pixel hunting, and a predisposition toward obtuse inventory puzzles. The concept of use A on B became sort of an industry standard as time progressed, and though typically avoided by modern adventurers, still seems to find its way from time to time back into our backpacks. Sierra Online was also noteworthy for being the progenitor of the MMO with their Imagination Network. The mid-80s saw the graphic adventure game genre explode, and many other video game companies joined in on the craze. Japanese studios ASCII, Enix, and Kemco, Broderbund, JVC, and the company that was to become their greatest rival to Sierra's throne, Lucasarts, as in George Lucas and Star Wars. Although Lucasfilm Games, as it was known at the time, later to be known as Lucasarts, had developed an adventure game based on the film Labyrinth for Activision previously, in an odd coincidence in contrast to Sierra, Lucasarts also began their adventure into publishing adventure games with another game about a house, 1987's Maniac Mansion, a manic romp around the strange and mysterious mansion of the insane Dr. Fred. It was the first graphic adventure game to feature switching of characters mid-game as the player controlled both Dave, the protagonist of the story, and up to two of his friends. Maniac Mansion was also the first game to be created in LucasArts' SCUM engine, which stands for the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion. It also spawned a TV series, and a sequel called Day of the Tentacle, which recently got a re-release by Double Fine Games. Lucasarts was responsible for many more beloved games, including the famed Caribbean pirate adventure, the Monkey Island series, Loom, Indiana Jones, and many more. Each made use of the Scum engine, with the exception of 2 games in their adventure library. 1998's Grim Fandango, one of my personal favorite games of all time, and 2000's Escape from Monkey Island, the 4th game in its series. 1998 was perhaps the year that most visibly bookends the decline of the graphic adventure and popularity in modern video gaming. In 1996, Sierra Online was purchased by e-commerce conglomerate CompuCard, or CUC International, in an attempt to expand into video game development. They had also bought Davidson & Associates, which were the owners of Blizzard Entertainment at the time. Ken Williams stepped down the same year as president of Sierra, and the change in direction for the company was immediately apparent. The Sony PlayStation had been released in 1995, and after its release, as well as the release of other revolutionary 5th-generation video game consoles like the Nintendo 64, saw a dramatic shift in consumer sensibilities from the vibrant, hand-created artwork of the 2D era to the new and exciting world of 3D graphics. If Doom popularized first-person shooters, its 3D spiritual sequel, Quake, released in 1996, cemented the FPS's place of dominance in the game market. The ability to explore a 3D world and experience grand visual experiences that it offered suddenly made the 2D puzzle rooms of point-and-click adventure games seem passé. Even adventure games were attempting to blunder into the 3D territory with mystery exploration puzzle games like Myst and The Seventh Guest. The final nails in Sierra's adventure game coffin were twofold. The chilly reception of King's Quest VIII Mask of Eternity by adventure game fans due to its clumsy transition into 3D and addition of combat mechanics left a bad taste in many mouths. In spite of its generally positive, widespread reception, it cast doubt on the adventure game consumer base. And Sierra's publishing of the official expansion for Diablo, Hellfire, and an experimental FPS called Half-Life by a studio founded by a pair of Microsoft alumni called Valve showed them that money was no longer in adventure games. Similarly, Lucasarts was seeing equally dire visions of the future of adventure games. Though it invested heavily in the development of new 3D technology for the development of Grim Fandango, it sold less than 500,000 copies, a significant decrease in sales from predecessors Curse of Monkey Island or Full Throttle. It was critically acclaimed as a masterpiece, but just couldn't compete in the market of the time. And LucasArts owned Star Wars, and was printing money with releases of X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, Rogue Squadron, Dark Forces, and many others. And with the sputtering death of 2 of adventure gaming's most visible juggernauts, so too did the video game community declare the death of a struggling genre in adventure games. And the market got quiet for a few years. Adventure games never truly went away, though. They merely hibernated in relative obscurity for a few years while waiting for the novelty of the modern 3D action game to slowly decline, and the demand for more meaningful narrative experiences to resurface. Among the ashes of the commercial adventure video game, a small but dedicated community of hobbyist game developers trickled in to fill the void that Sierra and LucasArts and all the other adventure game companies had left behind. The revival of adventure games through the hobbyist community was perhaps spearheaded by the development and rise of a free game engine called Adventure Game Studio, which you may or may not have heard me mention a few times in previous episodes of ThursDev. It was developed by a British software programmer named Chris Jones as a passion project, but quickly surged in popularity due to the masses of would-be adventure game developers that saw an opportunity to make an adventure game for themselves and seized upon it. It was helped that the interface was fairly smart, and games were really easy to make on it, and continue to be to this day, as it's still available if you want to give it a try. The AGS community was home to many that would eventually join the mainstream video games industry, yours truly included. The Blackwell series, Francisco Gonzalez's Golden Wake and Shardlight, Gemini Rue, The Shiva, Primordia, Resonance, and many other games released under Dave Gilbert's Wajid Eye label are also developed using AGS. The developers of the zombie survival horror game Project Zomboid also got their start in AGS with the polarizing adventure game project The Forgotten Element, which unfortunately never released. Ben Yahtzee Croshaw, the voice behind popular game review satire series Zero Punctuation, was the first to release a game made on the AGS engine with his adventure game Rob Blanc, and continued to develop AGS games, The Trials of Odysseus Kent, and the spectacular horror mysteries series The Chizou Mythos, although I have no idea really how to pronounce that, as well as a spate of other games. And many others, once again, like myself, have gone on to working careers in the games industry in significantly less spectacular or publicly visible ways. AGS from 1997 to the present day remains a popular engine for the creation of adventure games, and though not all, many of the adventure games on the market today are created in the AGS engine. But, though in secrecy the adventure game thrived, it never really truly regained legitimacy until the mid to late 2000s with the rise of Telltale games. Though many wouldn't quite describe the current and more well-known catalog of Telltale games as traditional adventure games, their roots are firmly planted there, perhaps thanks in part to the fact that their founders were members of Lucasarts' adventure game team, and they were working on a sequel to the 1993 hit Sam & Max Hit the Road before its cancellation in 2004. Add the addition of Dave Grossman, a member of the original development team of Monkey Island, and you had a group of adventure game all-stars that had made a new studio that was promising some very interesting things in the adventure game space. Aside from a few games based on the comic strip Bone and CSI, Telltale's first truly major hit in the adventure game space was Sam & Max Save the World, a return to formula, though completely in 3D. Their introduction of episodic content to adventure gaming was also something of a coup, allowing a focus on heavy narrative-driven games, but offering them in snippets, like syndicated television. And that's really what Telltale managed to do for the adventure game. It made them accessible by presenting them more and more like a television show with natural, high-quality voice acting and smart dialogue systems. They managed to retune the gamer's mind when thinking about the classic adventure game, from obtuse puzzles involving pouring cooking oil on a man's back to steal a copy of the map tattooed on his back, into more organic experiences, moving away from the pixel hunt and the inventory puzzle and focusing on the adventure part of adventure games. They released a number of Sam & Max episodic series games, as well as reviving the much-beloved Monkey Island series, another personal favorite with their Tales of Monkey Island games. And the true sign that they have brought adventure games back into the realm of true legitimacy is in their mega-hit series The Walking Dead, based off of the Robert Kirkman graphic novels of the same name. Although only the first Walking Dead retains the classic click to move, or move with the WASD and analog stick controls, it's quite visibly an adventure game, and as are many of the rest of Telltale's games. And wouldn't you know, suddenly even more studios are getting back into it. Square Enix, whose component parts had neither released an adventure game in decades, published Life is Strange recently. And even in their own weird way, Rockstar gave it a shot with LA Noire. And here we are in 2016, and even more great adventure game content is coming. The day of this video's release, a traditional point-and-click called Kathy Rain by Clifftop Games was released, with art by a good friend from my AGS days. And exciting things are also brewing in the crowdfunding space, with projects like Space Venture from Space Quest founders Mike Crow and Scott Murphy, Hero U, a spiritual successor to the Quest for Glory series by Laurie and Corey Cole, as well as remakes like Day of the Tentacle Remastered by Double Fine and Grim Fandango Remastered that was released very recently, and of course the ongoing episodic releases of the new Odd Gentleman King's Quest series make it a good time to be an adventure gamer. And that's it for me for this week. I hope that you enjoyed this video and hope that maybe I helped add a little dash of adventure to your life today. Thanks very much for listening, and take care.